Welcome everyone, I'm Nobody and I'm just going to talk about the threshold theory. The threshold theory is about love in a relationship. And first, before talking about it, we need to define what love in a relationship is. You would have all the different notions and concepts about love in a relationship and how that differs from familial love and love between friends. So some definitions you might think of in the beginning would be just joy from having the person around you. But that overlaps with friendship easily because you find joy when you're surrounded with friends. Some may also say that it's a willingness to compromise their own values for a lover. But I don't think that's a strong argument in a definition either. So the working definition we're going to go with is intimacy to the point of potential reproduction. You can very clearly take 2 seconds to realize that there's potential cases for exceptions, like friends with benefits, but we're going to say that's in a rare case phenomena. For now, our working definition for love in a relationship is as so: intimacy to the point of potential reproduction. Now, we can start thinking about categories. Categories are very useful because they help us understand and conceptualize things. Take, for example, we want to understand romantic attraction to another person. You can say, how are you romantically attracted to another person? You can have types, you can have red flag, green flags, all those different terms, right? But to make it more clear, I can break it down into 3 major categories. 1, it's about the physical type, about their physical attributes that make them attractive, whether their height, weight, appearances, their characteristics, facial features, their nose bone, their jaw bones, their frontal cranial bones. It has been researched and studies and showing that if you have certain facial structures, it's just more attractive. Number 2, we have resources. Initially, I put this as financial, but resources is just more of a generic term that we can work with. You could have monetary, you can have connections, you can have networking, you could be in multiple powerful circles, you can have multiple connections, and that's just another attribute for romantic attraction. Now, the third one is probably the most complex and warrants the most discussion. It's the behavioral category, which includes emotional, potential for personal growth, and other attributes. If you can think of anything else, it'll probably go into one of these 3 categories, and probably the behavioral one, like how they behave and how they act. You can say, oh, this person is really kind towards people, and that goes into behavioral, very obviously. Next, a comprehensive index, and we call that the pleasing index. And when we say the pleasing index, it encompasses all of these factors, and the single unit, if it passes the person's threshold, then it will determine whether a spark happens in that individual in feeling an attraction from another person. Now, what does this all mean? Try to digest this. So let's say we have the letter A is only attracted to letters that have A, E, I, O, or U. And for the letter B, they're only attracted to letters with a closed circle inside their letter. A is part of what B is attracted to, right? Because they have a closed loop within the letter. But B does not fulfill the attractive requirement for A. So hopefully that makes sense. So you can see that this is when we have a one-directional relationship or crush going on. There's only a one-directional interest. If the above categories, that's in the physical, resources, or behavior categories, change, that satisfy that A is satisfied by what B have in the attributes, then a spark occurs. Yeah, I'm obviously attracted to this person because they have this and this, but how can we universally standardize what the said attributes are in people and in their attractions? Physical, in the physical attributes, it's just general health indicators, that how a human walks, talks, not overly sickly kind of indicator, and just having a good general health. I think that is quite universal and standardized. In a universal attribute for resources, will be that the person is sustainable in their resources. What this means is that they can gather more resources than they can expend and use up. In the behavioral attributes, you probably want to go for someone that can understand the context and understand the context of what's right and what's wrong under different conditions. Aggression is bad in the context of punting a kid across the room, but when you punt a ball across the field and lands into the opposing net, then you get cheered for. We know universal principles like lying is bad. For an individual who they can go to their grandma and maybe their grandma got them some sort of toy, and let's say they already have that toy. In that scenario, your grandma would say, "Oh, do you like this toy?" Maybe in that scenario, it would be nice to say, "Oh yeah, I love this toy. I've never gotten a toy like this before." It would be a case of lying, but it's good deviance from the sense of lying because it's acting on good faith. Introspective growth. Maybe past action has caused certain damages, and understanding on whether these actions leading to a point could be amended so that they don't cause a future damage occurring again. I want to get into the main point about the pleasing index is that all these factors contribute and act on whether or not a person feel attracted to on a modular basis. It is a modular basis because it does not cause, but instead is an integral part building up to the threshold. Let's say person A has a requirement 1, 2, and 3, and person B may look at this and say, "Oh, I want to overachieve in 1. 1 is like really, really, really high, despite 1 being fulfilled. 2 and 3 are not, and that is insufficient to generate that spark in having an attraction." However, then we have an exception again. This is where we see individuals like millionaires, models, famous people. They can just be overwhelmingly high in one attribute that allows overcompensation in the other attributes. What this brings us to is attraction in a relationship is an all or none phenomenon. It behaves like a neuron. It either fires, get that spark, or it doesn't. So you either get attraction or you don't get attraction. There's no kind of in between. So things like situationship make sense in the context of if you don't meet that threshold, nothing's going to happen. We have not obvious factors in standards that may be attributed to luck. In physical attributes, some things that you may not have thought about before are MHC antigens. MHC antigens are basically what's present on all cells, and they are kind of like little ID factors for our cells' immune systems to recognize foreign particles and also recognize our own cells. Basically, having certain MHC antigens in your body can allow another person to pick up on that in a level that we cannot consciously be aware of. So that's why certain people smell better to you, or you smell familiar scents. There's this researcher named Wellesley who created the Wellesley effect. I forgot her first name, but she basically also did a study giving random research participants little claws and t-shirts of different people, either strangers or different familial family members, for them to smell. And in comparison, they have determined that their third cousins smell the best. In terms of resources, you can have circumstantial changes and global events that basically is attributed to luck, because you don't know when the Bitcoin is going to have a next big drop, or certain things gonna make the huge market crash, or this person wins the lottery and all that things. You can have circumstantial changes. This person suddenly become a really, really, really famous person because of, certain luck. And you can all have this occur without really foreplanning and just looking at a person initially. Behavioral, we can go into the genetic influences and also environmental factors, and understanding how they can have an interplay between each other. If you know Huntington's disease, point gene mutation, I think is a neurodegenerative disease. They become unable to move by age 50 or 60. But The reason why the disease is still prevalent is because in the last 5, 6, 10 years, before the onset of the symptoms, they become super temperamental and emotional, and they may have these cheating scandals on their wives and on their family, and just going off to somewhere, and they, from a evolutionary point of view, they get that extra boost in reproductive fitness. And we have environmental factors, just like how people get really cranky when you don't have any food or blood sugar in your system. That can influence how you behave in front of certain people at certain times, depending on how the environment is acting. Judges are not really conscious of their decision on whether to give prisoners parole or not, and the sole determining factor whether they give the parole is how long has it been since they had lunch or had a break. And we have different cultural contexts between individuals as well. So if you go and see another culture that they have their cow that just passed away and they bury it, someone may cluelessly comment that, hey, why don't they eat the cow? From their cultural context, it might be completely sacrilegious to do that, because to them, cows are a sacred part of their culture and tradition. So just different cultural contexts altogether. What the pleasing index also does is it not only helps formulate what the spark initial bond makes, but also helps maintain the bond in events that breaks and fights occur. That's why potentially you have these teenage couples within a month, if they have this certain big fight going on, they are more likely to split, as opposed to couples who were together for 1-2 years and they had a similar scale of fight happen, because this is analogous to like a neuron linkage, right? Kind of like a long-term potentiation kind of thing. They already kind of had memories together. Haha, haha. But okay, if you got this far, just know that love is an all or none phenomenon. Instead of trying to overspec in one requirement for your crush or someone that you want to be with, try to divide up your efforts. You don't have to overachieve in one to try to compensate. Wait, it's all neurobiology? Always has been. Alright, peace out. Take this information with how you will. Goodbye.